Hey there, Ervin here again to bring you a breakdown of the SG8P Punisher Plasma in Helldivers 2, which sounds extremely dumb when we have the Plasma Scorcher to name it the Punisher Plasma, so I'll be calling it the Plasma Punisher from now on. This weapon came to us with the cutting edge war bond and went relatively under the radar, quickly becoming a rather obscure weapon to utilize. But how good is it really? Well, today we're going to be taking a look at the technical specifications, target effectiveness, and damage breakpoints to find out. As usual with my breakdowns, all thoughts and opinions as far as viability that follows on this weapon are derived solely from testing done on difficulty 9 Helldive to give you the most accurate information on how these weapons hold up against the game's highest difficulty. Alright, so the Plasma Punisher is modeled very closely to resemble the real-life UTS-15, a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, but in the case of the Plasma Punisher, unlike its counterpart, simply named the SG8 Punisher, this weapon fires plasma, one of the four fundamental states of matter, made up by a significant amount of charged particles in any combination of ions or electrons. So, basically it fires balls of lightning that explode. And explode it does, in a similar fashion operating just like any grenade launcher would, with an absurd bullet drop accompanied by a pretty slow projectile speed. Firing this thing into the air looks a lot like a Halo Wraith's main cannon being fired off. The bullet drop is roughly an entire meter by the time it's traveled only 10. 3 whole meters by the time it's traveled 20, and a staggering 7 meters of drop by the time it's traveled 40 meters. Meaning to hit shots with this thing with the projectile itself and not just the explosion, you're going to be constantly aiming extremely high. Higher than any weapon we've covered thus far, even compared to the grenade pistol and the crossbow. The muzzle velocity is also relatively low as a result, meaning you'll need to lead targets often in addition to accounting for this absurd drop. Of course, as is the standard with these types of weapons, our red dot sight does us absolutely no favors, giving us no information to work with. It's as functionally useless as the other launcher type weapons, lacking any mil dots. So, here are some mental mil dots to help you out. At 10 meters, you'll need to be lining your target up with about here on the sight to hit them directly, and at 20 meters, use this prong at the bottom of the red dot to line up with the target. Anything beyond this, you'll be better off eyeballing with third person. On the bright side, however, there is no maximum range to this weapon, so you can function as a mini artillery battery for your team, able to rain down fires from some extremely far distances. The drop is also not all bad here, as it's defined enough and the projectile is large enough that you can often fire this weapon over the top of cover at the target, allowing you to take out, for example, heavy Devastator packs from the safety of cover without peeking them. The explosive radius of this weapon is unique compared to the other weapons we've looked at previously. The maximum radius enemies take any damage from is 4 meters out from where the shot lands, or an 8-meter diameter sphere around the projectile. Within the sphere, the outer 0.5 meters takes between 99% all the way down to 51% of the explosive damage, while the inner 3 meters will deal the full amount. Anything caught within the blast radius will also be heavily staggered or ragdolled, making this a very effective weapon at CCing targets. The relatively low amount of explosive damage also means you don't have to worry about accidentally one-shotting yourself with a point-blank blast. The worst that can happen is you'll be ragdolled and then mauled to death after as a result. Speaking of its damage, the Plasma Punisher deals 100 damage with the projectile itself, while the other 150 damage is the explosion. Due to its relatively small blast radius and low explosive damage, however, expect most enemies beyond the lightest of classifications to soak up a direct hit or several nearby explosions. This explosion is also unfortunately insufficient for closing bug holes or fabricators, which is a shame. Couldn't tell you exactly why that is, but it is. Sound profile-wise, the Plasma Punisher is remarkably quiet, garnering very little attention from firing it outside of an immediate 30 meters. The explosion, however, draws attention to it within about 20 to 30 meters of the blast, making it a very capable stealth weapon, able to take out lone guards quietly, or lure patrols off course and out of your way, which is great. This way and ergonomics are quite responsive as well, which is always nice to have. Reloading speed is a fixed speed as well. The weapon loads magazines that function as what is effectively a battery, meaning any ammo left in the magazine before reloading is lost. There is no one in the chamber rule, or speed up from reloading one shot from empty. Stagger-wise, as I mentioned earlier, it has a heavy staggering effect, making this weapon extremely capable at crowd-controlling tightly packed groups of enemies. Devastators notably cannot fight back while taking repeated shots from the Plasma Punisher, which is a huge plus. The fire rate is relatively low here, able to loose about 4 rounds per 3 seconds, or 1.33 rounds per second. The recoil is, however, very manageable due to this low fire rate, only requiring very little recentering between those shots to stay on target. Magazine and ammo economy wise, we are looking at 8-round magazines, which is not a lot to work with on a case-by-case basis with how we only bring 250 damage per shot to the table in a very small AoE. You will be reloading mid-fight with this weapon pretty often as a result. You are, however, granted 12 spare magazines, bringing our total rounds up to 104 before we run out. We also receive 3 mags back from field crates and 6 mags back from resupply crates, meaning our overall ammo economy is actually quite respectable. The reload speed is also quite snappy despite being that fixed pace we mentioned earlier, meaning you won't have too much time out between your volleys. To end our technical specs, let's talk about the penetration value of the weapon. Like all explosive AoE weapons, we get the confusing mix unassisted by arrowheads tooltips. The projectile itself is light penetration, class 2, while the explosion that emanates from the projectile is medium penetration, class 3. Combine this with the explosion being able to cause damage that permeates through armor for many enemies, and you've got a weapon with a wide range of targets it's effective against. The exact same target effectiveness as the Plasma Scorcher and Eruptor for some examples. Now that we know what kind of penetration we're working with, let's talk about those all-important damage breakpoints on the enemies of democracy, starting with the automatons. Light bots are taken out by any direct hits or nearby explosions from this weapon with ease, making multi-kills against them a standard while utilizing it. Striders are also taken out in one explosion, although you want to land that projectile somewhere on the Strider's body ideally, due to the small explosive area of effect we're working with. Ideally landing the projectile somewhere on the upper half of the Strider so the explosion can permeate through, eliminating the rider. Heavy and rocket devastators generally go down in about 4 to 5 direct hits with this weapon. As precision with such a large projectile is very difficult, this is more or less the number you'll be working with here. Headshots are possible and will bring them down in just 2, but without sufficient trigger time, this will not be a shot made often by many people. On the bright side though, as I mentioned earlier, this weapon staggers everything it touches, making any direct engagement with devastators an absolute breeze as a result. Berserker packs are also easily dealt with by this weapon, being eliminated in 3 direct hits while being unable to move or fight back while taking fire from the Plasma Punisher. Very solid way to handle these, for sure. Gunships, yep, nope, not ideal. Expect to fire a few magazines at these even if you can land the hits with your drop and low muzzle velocity. Or just do the right thing and swap weapons to something that handles this way better. Tanks and cannon turrets are a decent target, but unfortunately they take 10 shots to eliminate to the heatsink or near it, meaning to kill one of these with this weapon alone, you'll need to reload before it dies. You can thankfully damage these sinks landing the projectile anywhere near the back half or top of these targets, but generally it's going to take too many shots on its own with a low fire rate to be worthwhile. You'll want to use your support weapon or stratagems here, at least in part. The Quasar Cannon being fired into a quick swap with this weapon does result in taking them down in just 1 shot from the Plasma Punisher afterwards, which is a great combo to keep in mind. Hulks take no damage from the front here, but explosions can be fired in such a way to land behind them, damaging the heatsink. This will be destroyed in 4 direct hits, also staggering the Hulk with each shot, making this actually a pretty decent option for eliminating them if you can get their backs facing you. Factory Striders take a lot of shots to their underbelly to destroy with the Plasma Punisher, like enough that I lost count. Don't do this. That does it for the automaton, so let's move on to the Terminids, which I was surprised at how well it performed overall, given there are some pain points with its breakpoints that you'll be seeing in just a minute. Hunters and Scavengers are taken out with 1 direct hit each. The explosive damage is unfortunately not enough to kill Hunters outright most of the time with just 1 blast, more often than not meaning you'll need to land 2 shots near them to take them out, or hit them directly. Scavengers are low enough to the ground that they also survive the AoE on occasion, which does not feel great. On the bright side, it's important to remember we do have that heavy stagger effect being afflicted with each blast, meaning at the very least these enemies cannot fight back while taking fire from the Plasma Punisher. Just don't let them get too close, or else there will be explosive consequences. Warriors are taken out in 2 nearby explosions or 2 direct hits either way. The damage breakpoint here is pretty awkward, gotta say. Hive guards can survive up to 4 direct hits from the Plasma Punisher, although typically only 3. A bit of a tall ask, but not an uncommon number of shots for this enemy type. Brood commanders are quite durable. They are able to absorb up to 5 shots from the Plasma Punisher, generally anywhere. This would normally feel pretty bad considering the fire rate, but how hard they get blasted backwards each time they get hit makes it hard to complain about how in control you are whenever you're firing on them. Bile spewers are a decent target here, going down in 3 shots to the head region, or more commonly just 4 direct hits anywhere on the body. The fact they can't spit at you while taking fire from this weapon makes dispatching them relatively smooth. Stalkers are dealt with easily by the Plasma Punisher, taking 4 direct hits to bring down, but staggered and unable to approach while taking those 4 hits. Even in groups, you will likely have no issue handling these. Just make sure they don't get too close before you can lock them up with it. Shriekers are a no. You can kill them in 1 hit if you land it, but with the low muzzle velocity, good luck landing these shots. Best to use something else to make sure these never spawn to begin with by using anti-tank to take out the nest from beyond their spawn range, as this weapon deals no damage to those nests. Chargers can be taken down with the Plasma Punisher, but it's definitely not the cleanest option by any means. You can damage their rear by landing shots under them, but you can expect this to take several magazines. On the other hand, we can take them down in about 6 to 8 shots directly to the rear. It is at least staggered while you do this, but with so many options that can take care of these so much quicker in even just 1 hit, it's honestly not worth it most of the time. Bile Titan sacks are destroyed by the Plasma Punisher in 2 shots. This, as usual, is not enough to take them down alone. You'll need to have dealt some serious damage beforehand for it to result in a kill, or switch to your support weapon or stratagems to seal the deal, as this weapon cannot deal any damage otherwise without chipping off the armor first. Okay, that does it for our breakpoints. So, how good is it? Well, in my opinion, the SG8P Punisher Plasma is a strong weapon, able to keep up with its peers such as the Jar 5 and Plasma Scorcher, with its own unique flair. The single target DPS is definitely not the best by any means, but the breakpoints are overall decent, and the powerful crowd control application holds this weapon up. Your magazine size is overall poor, but your reload speed is quite good to compensate. Our muzzle velocity and drop is pretty difficult to utilize proficiency without a lot of trigger time with the weapon, but we can use that arc to our advantage when we are able to use it against the automatons by firing over our cover from a relative point of safety. With a fantastic array of enemies the weapon is effective against overall, it's a great weapon for those that can get past the idea of utilizing a primary that is essentially a micro grenade launcher. The feel of this weapon is definitely not for everyone as a result, but for those that enjoy it or can get around its quirks, it's a powerful weapon for sure. Thank you for watching till the end, and have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
And now, another helpful tip from General Brash.
Iravin has brought us valuable intel on the inner workings of our Punisher that plasmas. Something even I had very little information about. For this, I am ordering all active Helldivers to like, comment, and subscribe to his channel. Failure to do so will result in a return of the Scramble Mission Modifier. Brash Tactics! Use them or die trying.